Correctly with the correct amount.
D20 Radio, where gamers roll.
www.d20radio.com.
Roll for initiative.
Greetings and salutations out there, listeners. This is the Roll for Initiative podcast, issue number 17. I'm your host, DM Vince, along with DM Jason and DM Nick. Nick, how you doing this week?
Pretty good. I'm doing all right. How you doing this week?
Good. And Jason, who's silent in the background at the moment, but he's ready to talk. How you doing, Jason?
Hey, it's been a really good week, and big news in gaming here in New York City. The 20-sided store has opened up over in Williamsburg in Brooklyn. We'll be talking about it more next week, but I just wanted to kind of get that out there as the big gaming news that's happened here this week.
Oh, cool. We'll have to definitely hear more about that as time progresses. So, website, rfipodcast.com, rfistaff@gmail.com. You can email us at, call us for a voicemail, 206-279-3272. Click on the Google voicemail. Or you can go to facebook.com/rfipodcast. And speaking of the Facebook site, we're going to be talking about, Jason, we spoke about last week, T-shirts, right?
Yes, and the T-shirts are ready, so you can go take a look on the website. They're up there now. And we're going to give one away.
Yeah. So basically, from when the podcast is placed up and ready to download, which would probably be around Tuesday or Wednesday, depending on when it's edited, you have a chance to comment on the Facebook site. Anybody that leaves a comment between when the show is published until Sunday, the 23rd, I believe it is. Mm-hmm. Yes, the 23rd, by noon time, Eastern Standard Time, will be eligible for a free T-shirt. Jason will do a live rolling on the next podcast, because every person will be assigned a number. And that person that gets rolled up, will contact them and give them their free shirt.
Yeah, so you get to hear how we figure out, what kind of a roll it is in case it's 47 people, because I can't find my D47. But
I'll lend you mine, don't worry.
Yeah, but one thing, so for people who are commenting on this, what we're going to do, like you're saying, what we're going to do is assign a number to each person that we see comment between the time the podcast goes up and Sunday at noon. That gives us a few hours to, work out the numbers before we actually start rolling. And please don't just comment, "I want a T-shirt," because that's kind of boring. We're not going to punish anybody for making we're not going to leave you out if your comment is just, "I want a T-shirt." It's just, we'll be kind of sad. It'd be nicer if people actually went and commented about things that were from the show, whether it's articles on the site or stuff we talk about on the show, whatever it is, just go about your normal way, and, we'll roll based on who leaves comments.
Yeah. So, if you want to even go the extra mile and even leave a voicemail, that'll maybe give you a bonus point in Jason's eye or my eye. You never know. No.
I'm not giving any plus ones to hit. All right, so to kick things off, I want to begin by wishing a happy birthday. It's kind of unusual. We don't usually wish people happy birthday on the show, but I want to wish a happy birthday to Max's wife, Suzanne.
Happy birthday.
It was her 30th birthday last week, and Max wrote a really nice email to me over on Dragon's Foot. It turns out that he is not only a listener to the podcast, but he was a reader of my old magazine, Permission, which I thought was kind of a cool crossover. Cool. And he says that that Suzanne rolls her eyes at him a lot while we're on the air, and says that this is the weirdest, nerdiest, most intricate thing ever. So, but I think she's
and we love
listening. It. We think she's secretly listening in. So happy birthday, Suzanne.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Suzanne.
Happy birthday, Suzanne. Comic book guy voice for you. And Jason, you wanted to mention something about the articles on the website too.
Oh yeah, so we got a lot of new good stuff going up. So there's a new +2 to save from Todd. So this week, what's up there right now is an article called "Who Am I?" and it's all about secondary skills. A really good look
You're Jason.
at. Sorry?
You're Jason.
Oh, right. the article's called "Who Am I?" It's a really good look at secondary skills. You know how they're used in the game. Maybe a little bit more in-depth look at that, and keep in mind that +2 to save is a weekly feature, so it'll be a new one up in just a couple of days.
Very
and then
cool.
also Matt, and I'm actually realized that I don't know if his last name is pronounced Ide or Ide. So Matt, I'm really sorry because we've only talked by email, but he has a great new article up called "Go with the Flow Gaming."
Cool.
A look at
Okay,
how to
cool.
handle rules, kind of from our talk last week about problem players. He's talking about rules lawyers, and how to keep your game flowing when a few too many players start pulling out the charts and arguing over things and trying to slow the thing down.
We killed them.
Kill them. And
That's my job.
and then PC Buzz has been putting up some great reviews of the Shadowy Paths modules, which are available at Dragon's Foot, and he's got the first 2 up so far, Temple of Dianetchit and Horror of Spider Point, and number 3 is going up soon. So lots of great
Nice.
articles on the site.
Just want to also take a moment to say that there's no need to send an email. We do realize the article is there pending. Just takes a few minutes to review and publish it. That's all.
Yeah, that's
Yeah, we'll get it.
that's well, no, I'll take the bullet for that one because it's my job to make sure that they're proofread and up, and sometimes
Yes, fall on your sword now.
these take a little while. So, but
little
we
drastic.
will try to keep getting these up in a timely manner because we have some great writers and really enjoy having them.
And we-
Yeah, it just adds so much to the website, just knowing that that the Roll for Initiative community is growing.
The what do we call them? The RFItes or the RFI Nation?
RFI
Sure,
Nation.
hold on.
Yeah,
RFI Nation.
RFI Nation sounds good. Okay, well, we're moving on. We actually do have a sad moment to talk about, and Jason, you want to take that first moment?
Yeah, so everybody, by the time you hear this podcast, it'll be sometime now, and I think the news is around about Frank Frazetta, who passed away a little over a week ago at the age of 82. And it's just a major loss. When it comes to fantasy art, losing Frank Frazetta was like what it was like to lose Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, on the gaming side of it. He really was the father of it all.
Yeah.
Frank did. He began his work in comics and movie posters, and did his work adorned countless books. An entire generation of Hollywood movies owe their entire look. The whole sword and sorcery genre basically owes its look to what Frank Frazetta created, and there's some great things out there. I mean, I think it's really worthwhile to go back and take a look at. There's a good movie called Painting with Fire, which I think you can get it on Netflix. I know you can get it on iTunes. You can probably find it at your local video store if you have a really cool video store.
No.
Absolutely recommend people go out and take a look at this. You get to see Frank and his family all the way through the movie. If there's ever a movie made about Frank Frazetta's life, a retelling, they've got to have Robert De Niro play him.
Really?
Because
Robert De Niro, really.
Frank Frazetta is just this Brooklyn, native son. He's sort of like this cross between, I think, Robert De Niro and maybe Paulie Walnuts or something, right?
Oh boy.
He was this really amazing athlete too. I mean, he was actually drafted for the major leagues and decided not to go for it. And it's one of the reasons that his paintings were always so dynamic. He never painted from photos or sketches or anything. He just went completely out of from what was in his mind. And it's because he just understood the body so well, because he was an athlete, that all of his paintings felt so real.
Yeah, you're absolutely
And-
right on that.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable what his natural talent was. And one other thing that was kind of interesting from having watched the movie myself recently, there was a little bit of talk about whether what he was doing was fine art, and kind of based on that, what all fantasy artists do, is this fine art? And you heard a couple of art critics come out and say, well, not really fine art because he was just telling stories, he was just illustrating. And another person in the movie said, well, what do you think the entire classical period of painting was? It was telling stories, usually from the Bible, but, here's these fantasy artists doing the same sort of approach. And it reminded me of the way that maybe literary snobs tend to talk about sci-fi or fantasy fiction. And it just really kind of got me up in arms a little bit. And you realize that Frank Frazetta, and they said several times, many different people, he really is one of the most influential and important artists of the 20th century. And his passing is a monumental moment and a very sad time.
I have to agree. I mean, when I was looking through all this, just refreshing myself on just how much of an influence he was. He, like you said, he defined the sword and sorcery genre by his look, and just the attention to detail he had to the human body. When you look at his artwork, was just amazing.
It just moved. He didn't pose his characters. He caught them in the middle of doing things.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, just a giant.
Yeah, without him, we wouldn't have some of the stuff we have today. So
Yeah, I mean, before he came along, it was all of the kind of artwork that dealt with fantasy or sword and sorcery stuff was, like Roman gladiators and very historical types of things. And all of a sudden you have this man come along who just springing forth from his imagination is these completely different worlds that no one had ever seen before. And even the authors themselves started getting influenced by the visions that he had out there. Just completely genre defining.
Yeah.
Well, we just take a moment to reflect upon his work and take a moment to honor him on this show. And also, Nick, you had another announcement of it is older news now, but it's still very worth talking about.
That's correct. In fact, I think it was because that the news is kind of so late is because of confirmation of this. Another sad bit of news, John Eric Holmes, or J. Eric Holmes, as he's better known as, passed away back in the March 20th. Many of us maybe know him as the writer of the Holmes edition of the Dungeons and Dragons game.
Right.
Who, by doing that, really ushered in a lot of people into the hobby with that particular edition. I'm lucky enough at least to have a copy of it.
Yeah.
I got it through the Silver Anniversary Edition box set that TSR put out many years ago.
Right.
And they had a copy of the Holmes edition of D&D. They thought it was such an influence on the game that they had to have it in that 25th anniversary box set. And just beyond that, when I was looking a little bit more on Dr. Holmes, as he's better known.
Yeah, because he was a doctor.
Yeah.
Yes, he was a professor in neurology at USC. And he also did some writing for in the style of Edgar Rice Burroughs. In fact, he had some works
with his son. I thought.
Yes, he did a book with Edgar Rice Burroughs' son that was privately printed in '93 called Red Axe of Pellucidar, and the first book was called Mayhars of Pellucidar, which is published in '76, which had approval from the Burroughs estate, being part of that whole. Part of that whole world, that whole, I guess you call it that universe of Edgar Rice Burroughs that he created. Mm-hmm. And he did a few more things in nonfiction and doing some other fictional works with Boringer the Halfling and Zareth the Elf. He did some things in the 70s and 80s. But as most of us know, he was most known for that version of D&D that came out, I believe, in 78 or 79. So, yeah, he will be sorely missed.
Yeah, we're losing a lot of the people that are the connection between those, the people that were influenced by the Conan and Tarzan era, and that kind of brought us forward to where we are right now. And it's important for us to go back and maintain those connections and know where we came from.
Exactly, knowing our roots help us keep this thing alive.
And as in pay homage to them, we'll end this segment with a moment of silence going into Sage Advice.
Sage Advice.
So that brings us into Sage Advice, back onto the show track. We had a couple emails in this week. A lot of people wishing us a great show. They found us. A couple of things we want to point out. DM Paragon wrote in, and he answered our question about paladins and the were creature when we spoke about last episode.
Yeah.
And he did say paladins lose their paladin hood. And he put a little duh there. That should be obvious to everybody.
I'd agree with that.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Now, the player must change their alignment to the were creature's type. So the penalties and alignment penalties do apply for voluntary changing alignment and not working against their alignment back. Adjusting to characters, +1 to strength or dex, player's choice. -3 to charisma, even though he abbreviated with the CHR. I usually abbreviate with CHA. They are done having their mount as well. I was just noting that because usually I see CHA. That's all.
Yeah.
Natural animals will not come near the player as they're -3 to charisma, and to anyone using silver weapons against them get a +5 to damage only.
So already that's kind of interesting the way that he handles it when you think about how a druid would be affected by this, given their animal friendship and all that.
Oh, true.
Yeah.
No, I like this. This is a good way of talking about handling this. We should probably put his notes up on the. Actually, you know what, DM Paragon, if you're listening, maybe you could leave that as a comment on the article as well, so everybody has that. There's a lot of different rules you can use here. I kind of like the Dragon Magazine rules, where you get the opportunity to have alignment, to have mental or physical things happen differently. But everybody can address their own rules with these.
Sure.
I like his a lot.
Yeah.
I did notice one other person left a comment either on the Facebook site or on the website about the fact that the word weir in werewolf, etc., comes from the word for man. I haven't bothered to look up the etymology on that, but I believe it. That makes sense.
Right.
And I think their point was that, therefore, it should only be humans. Sounds great, except for the fact that I would say that if you're looking at where words come from in English, probably you're not going to find a lot of words coming from the word for a halfling, because that wasn't a word. That's not a
correct.
There's only humans in the real world, so yeah, men. But
right.
It's still a point well taken, and I think that was a very fun thing last week when we realized that there's something we can genuinely just pick your rule because the books were different.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, they conflicted.
I also want to point out someone did put a comment in the Dragonsfoot forum on our post topic saying, "I don't believe you that they're were-sharks." So,
well then, let's
Monster
find
Manual
that picture. Yep.
I think he was just joking, but it was kind of funny. It's like, I don't believe you.
I still want the wereflumph.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, well, when that movie, what's the one, Sharktopus, comes out?
Sharktopus?
Yeah.
If that doesn't prove that sharks can be bred with other creatures, what does?
Ugh.
Yeah. Okay, and moving on, Darren F. wrote in and said, "Where is it engraved in stone that all treasures have to be magical, monetary, statuary, or jewelry oriented? Why can't we have mundane treasures?" And he's talking about the Dragon's Hoard segment.
Okay, yeah, I didn't understand that at first, but Dragon's Hoard.
Yeah, neither did I.
Okay, well, that's a good point. I think... Actually, Vince, you were saying something about what a dragon would actually have.
Well, yeah. Would a dragon have mundane items in their hoard? No. Honestly, I'd have to say.
They'd have a lot of gold, but I don't think we could do a long segment about the dragon's hoard. Gold pieces. What do you think of this?
Yeah, that's just the name of the segment. Doesn't mean we're talking about an actual dragon's hoard.
Oh, I am.
We are.
I have a specific dragon in mind.
Well,
No. No.
In the Horde is usually generally magical items or of well-worth items, so I wouldn't think someone's laundry
it's more
would be...
interesting for us to come up with the ones that are magical because there's more to say about them. But, Darren, if you have some mundane treasures that you're thinking of, we love to hear ideas from people. So, if there's any treasures somebody would like us particularly to talk about, please.
Oh, he in his email...
Hey, Jason?
Yeah?
Kind of on that, I was lucky enough to even have a book that's called The Mother of All Treasure Tables that was published a while back, about 4 years ago. And it has kind of some mundane items in it, but, like, I guess, like a elaborate studded leather tunic or kilt,
Yeah.
And it's worth 50 gold because of how it's elaborately, made. So that's kind of a mundane item, I suppose.
Yeah, very mundane.
Well, Darren did go on to list a whole bunch of items I didn't include in the show notes. So I will forward on to you, so you can look at them.
Name one. Let's hear one.
I don't have the email open at the moment.
Oh, okay.
I apologize.
Well, the kilt of diamonds will only have so much to talk about it, but maybe so. We'll take a look at it, and we'll try to really think about how to keep it interesting on the treasures. So
yeah.
Okay, and then Nick, you want to take the last one that we had written in?
Oh yeah, we had was it DM Ron?
Right.
He got us on from his iPhone, and he was talking about again with the when we were talking about paladins a while back and how they might not mingle with people or player characters of neutral or evil alignment. Well, he says, the DMG clearly states that the paladin cannot frequent with evil characters. PCs do not walk around with neon signs above their heads indicating their alignment.
True.
So he says, as a result, I think this presents tremendous roleplay opportunities, as a DM would allow and teach the players a lot about alignments. Well, I agree to a point, but I think he forgot that the paladin has that detect evil 60-foot radius ability. So it kind of trumps that whole thing, don't it?
Yeah, but
it kind of does. But well, first of all, I think he raises a really good point, whether we're talking about paladins or not, is that players don't wear T-shirts with their alignment on them.
They don't?
Right.
Totally good point. Although I think we should probably sell T-shirts with alignment on them.
Well, at least,
thought of that.
Vince, not in our games they don't.
Okay.
Right. But, and you're right, paladins detect evil, but I've read a few different thoughts on what detecting evil actually means for a paladin, and whether it means that you can actually detect somebody's alignment at all, or whether it means that they actually have to be having evil intent. And so if you wanted to take DM Ron's approach to things of trying to make the evil character a little bit harder to discern, you could take the idea of detect evil as being something that is on a gradient or on a spectrum. So, if somebody is walking around with evil in their heart and they're plotting something terrible, the paladin would detect that, let's say.
Yeah.
But if they're particularly intelligent and wise, maybe even wisdom's more important than intelligence, and they're able to mask their feelings or hide their true motives, that could be pretty fun. So I like DM Ron's idea.
I have to politely disagree.
Ooh.
Your alignment is your alignment. I mean, a paladin has to stay lawful good. He can't mask his lawful goodness. How could someone else, mask their alignment regardless of their intelligence? I mean,
I think masking your lawful goodness, it's almost trying to hide the fact that you're evil is a pretty evil thing to do. Trying to hide the fact that you're good isn't necessarily a good thing to do.
Aha!
So I would give the evil person a little bit more room for deviousness in my campaign. Okay. So I'm okay with it.
Is the detect evil always on? Do you have that role? Is it like an automatic thing? Does it flip on and off a switch?
No.
I believe the paladin has to concentrate doing it.
Okay,
then. You've definitely got to try. So if nothing else, if the paladin never thinks to try to detect evil on his fellow party members.
There's your role-playing opportunities. If someone who is evil walks into the party and pretends to be
evil
good...
character walks into a bar.
He walks into a bar and he says, "Bartender, I need a drink." The bartender says, "Oh, never mind."
Well,
Man walks into a-
I guess
Man
where
walks into a bar. Ow.
Ow. Why the long
where
face?
DM Ron kind of gets into this is if you look in the player's handbook on page 22 under the Paladin,
Yes.
it says detect evil at up to 60-foot distance as often as desired, but only when the Paladin is concentrating on determining the presence of evil and seeking to detect it in the right general direction. So it's kind of like a ray, I guess, that he can detect.
It's not
It's almost
Spidey
like-
sense.
It's like
No.
evil radar,
Yeah.
you know? It's evil radar detector.
Right, so if someone walks in and portrays themselves as not an evil person, the paladin might not think to detect evil.
Maybe.
I mean, obviously, if he walks into the conversation with a bloody knife and blood all over him and saying, I'm a good person, the paladin's going to go, right.
I have a question with that. That's true.
Yeah, actually, that would be a really cool idea. Speaking about the T-shirts, Jason, the Roll for Initiative podcast, I stand on the chaotic evil side, or something like there's a tagline on the back.
Oh, my God.
Could you see that? Anyway, that's going to wrap those up for this week, and we'll go into our poll of the week.
Ooh, one of those electronic voting dealies.
So for the poll of the week, we have, what type of player are you? So there's a couple options here on the website, and it's right now, there's only a couple votes in. There's a lead of 50-50 mix for half roleplay, half hack and slash, 75% hack and slash, 25% roleplay, 25% hack and slash, 75% roleplay, 100% hack and slash, or all roleplay, baby. What do you pick, Jason?
Okay, so I'm going to interpret the word roleplay to include just thinking your way through puzzles and troubles and those types of things.
It's spelled with an E.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to say because I don't really think that I'm either so much as just trying. I guess roleplay. Yeah, now that I'm talking it out loud, I'd probably say about 75% roleplay.
75-25 for you?
Yeah.
I'm 50-50. You know, I like a balance of, you know, role-playing my character and interaction with the other people in the party, what have you. But I also like, you know, kill the monsters and loot the bodies, too. I mean...
Well, yeah, me too. I guess what I'm thinking is that if I look at hack and slash as being just the part where I'm attacking with the sword or whatever, then the role play by default is everything else, which includes, you know, searching for traps, you know, trying to work out the puzzles, running away from the monsters, all those kind of things. So in that sense, I would do that if that's the idea.
Well, without looking into it too deep, let's just go. I'm going to pick the 75% roleplay, 25% hack and slash. Is how I generally play my games. And in case you're wondering, last week's poll of what creature to identify mostly with AD&D First Edition, the Kobolds won. Kobolds.
Woo, kobolds!
They won 21-20 over dragons, trumping the dragons, but I think there was an error in the polling format.
I demand a recount.
You can demand a recount because it looks like DM Jason voted twice. Jason.
Did I vote for different things?
No, you voted for the Kobolds twice.
Dun, dun,
then
dun.
It's a dead
It's
heat.
a dead heat, actually, if you don't want to count that. I don't know how you managed it, Jason, but you voted twice according to the
No
pollings.
idea. Vote early and vote often.
You did
Damn
vote
you.
often and early.
Vote off and that's right.
All right, that'll wrap things up. Just go to the site, rfipodcast.com, cast your vote in the poll of the week.
Typical. Of all the evil creatures in the world, I had to find one with table manners.
What are you kidding me? I spent years cultivating the worst table manners on the planet.
Table manners.
And now on to Table Manners. This week, Table Manners is going to focus... Table Manners will focus this week on a Stickler's Spotlight. I don't know why I couldn't say that this week.
I think I know why.
Oh. Because
Has
we're
to do
focusing...
with the actual table manners thing.
Alcohol and its effect on
Alcohol.
characters. And players, for that matter. So what happens to a character that drinks? Jason.
I don't actually know. I was trying to flip through here because I haven't run into this recently, so I haven't had to pull up a table or anything. Do you guys have it in front of you?
Yes, we do.
Yes, I do.
Okay, well,
Actually,
thanks for calling on me then.
You're welcome.
Well, I did a little bit on this, and it's come up in games in the past. It's actually alcohol and other drugs, this same table that's in the DMG on page 82 and 83. And it gives a listing of different effects and what the state of intoxication is of the character, either slight, moderate, or great. And the effects will be on like your morale, intelligence, wisdom, dex, charisma, your attack dice, your hit points. So depending on how intoxicated you are will affect all these different abilities.
Right.
And the only thing with this is there are no hard and fast rules for the different types of alcohol and or drugs that would say this is a slight debilitating, this one is a moderate, or this is a greatly intoxicating drug or alcohol. So
I think you could go with a pretty straightforward thing. I mean, just number of drinks, blood alcohol level. You don't have to sit down and work it out too carefully. You could just essentially set a rule based on the size of the character and the number of drinks they had. You know, you count your shot of liquor as equivalent to a pint of beer, and you should be good to go.
Wow.
Yeah, that's how I kind of, in a way, I kind of do it too. And I think with DMs here, I guess according to rules, because they're so short in here, it's really up to the DM to determine with their best judgment how the characters, affected. Like you said, their weight, maybe their con. I think Constitution's a huge factor in that.
That's good.
So, and that's how I usually play it. Is the higher the con, the more resistant you are going to be to alcohol and other types of drugs.
I mean, you might want to, as a DM, if you want to change it up for different races, so that, for example, dwarves have a higher tolerance than elves or something.
Yeah, that's how I play it too.
The way I do it, I just do a real simple way because I don't really want to keep track of all this stuff. But in case you want to know how I do it, I give the player the option of how long they want to drink. For instance, they could spend a minimum of 1 hour in the tavern drinking, and then they can tell me by hour increments how many hours they want to spend time in there. And for each hour, I will add various points and take off various points off of each statistic. So if they spend, say, 2 hours in the tavern drinking, and I'm talking about drinking, not just nursing a beer or something like, some people do. I would
ale,
add,
you mean? Don't you mean an ale?
Yes, excuse me, an ale or hard liquor. I don't distinguish between the two because I assume that people will drink ale and hard liquor at the same time. I would give them bonuses to strength per the hour. So 2 hours, 2 bonuses to strength. Their constitution would go up. Their intelligence and wisdom would drop at the same time as well. So that's how I handle those things.
Okay. Yeah, Okay, go ahead.
Jason?
No, well, anyways, I was just going to say, I think one of the big questions is why are they drinking in the game? And if your players are just saying we want to sit in the tavern, I would be more interested in if there's a situation where they have to be drinking in order to gain the trust of the people they're with or just to fit into the place they are or whatever sort of thing comes up in the game. Because if they're just deciding how many drinks they're having in a tavern, that's something I remember doing when we were, kids. Because when we're 13, the idea of I'm getting drunk was pretty exciting.
Oh boy,
like like an 8-bit theater.
Yeah, Dead Alewives, those guys.
Yes.
But now that getting carded is more exciting than not being able to drink, at our advanced age, I don't find players quite going down that path so much.
Well,
so if intoxication comes up in the game, it usually has to have a bit more of a motive.
Well, I had a character that actually had his whole role-playing persona based off of getting his character drunk before he went on adventures, so...
Sort of a Robert Downey Jr. kind of thing?
Or Captain Jack Sparrow type thing?
Perfect.
Robert Downey Jr.
Yeah, we
could be, what's it, from Black Books, maybe, so...
Kind of a
Dylan
Nick
Thomas.
Nolte kind of guy.
Yeah, so you're right. That could fit in really well, and maybe you could use this.
Yeah,
There might be long-term effects on the character as well.
So next bulletin point: how could you keep track of this as a DM? That's how I keep track of it. What I just told you. How would you keep track of it, Nick?
Gosh, I guess I would keep track of it almost the same way Jason does it. Is how many drinks have you had per hour?
Mm-hmm.
And if you've been there 1 hour and you had 2 drinks of a certain type, I would say, well, that's probably a moderate, effect on you, and this is what's going to happen to you. So, and I would just keep track. If they want to be there all night and have a good old time, well, yes, things will get worse and worse over time.
Yeah, if you're doing the whole time passes kind of thing, then you might say, well, you were there for 5 hours. We're not going to go into all the bits. 5 hours, you had 8 drinks. You're not going to be very useful afterwards, or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you're playing it out, I mean, if the time spent in the tavern is an integral part of what's occurring in that part of the adventure, then if you want to just be ticking them off on a piece of paper, or if you want to make it even easier on yourself. I'm starting to get more into the idea of keeping some sort of counters around, like some poker chips or something, for these types of things. So you could say, just so you don't even have to get too strict about it or worrying about exact amounts of time. Just every now and then, as you're going through it, you could kind of think as the DM, I think you're done with your drink, and toss them another poker chip. And then, you've been doing it for a bit, and now your player has 4 chips in his hand because you figure he's been there long enough for 4 drinks.
True. Okay, cool. There's an or.
There's an or. Another one that I hadn't thought about before you brought up this topic for this show. But since you mentioned this will be a segue maybe into the next thing. Do you allow your players to actually drink during the game?
Yes. Right. Okay.
Maybe that's a good way to do it. Be like, okay, if we're going in the tavern, let me go grab some beers for real.
You know what? I've done something like that in my games. So, I've had players drinking. So
the last group I was in when I lived in Connecticut, it was a whole bunch. It was me, one other guy, and 4 girls, and all they did was drink during the game. So that's why I had brought up that issue.
Yeah, I mean, if everybody's having fun drinking during the game, that's great. If that's what they want to do.
Obviously, if you're 12 and 13 playing this game, you're not going to be drinking. Nor does RFI podcast condone drinking and the use of alcohol at such a young and early age.
I do. Start them young.
Jason.
Yeah, Jason? I mean, I think if you're over 8, you can drink.
RFI does not condone the comments by Jason.
Yes, there's individual comments, but
yes.
In my group, we're all in our 30s and some of us getting into our 40s, and so I have one player. He brings a bottle of wine. I'm kind of the beer connoisseur. I'll bring a few beers, and sometimes somebody will, bring something else. So it's not only it just goes with the whole kind of event being at the game, which because we only play like once a month anyway.
It all depends on how comfortable you are with your group too.
Yeah, that's true. Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't see a problem. I mean, personally, I don't usually drink during games at all, just because I don't drink that much. Or do anything else because I'm over it. I've been there. I've seen that movie. I know how it ends.
Just over it.
But I won't say what happens at one of my games. Well, who cares? I don't name these guys on the air or anything.
True.
But there is one game I play in which I'm the only player who isn't stoned the entire game.
Wow. Breaking the laws at Jason's house. Shh.
It's and you know what? I can't tell the difference with these guys. They're playing the same. So I'm like, good. That's cool.
Jason's getting his butt kicked next time he plays.
Okay. But if everybody's the point is that if everybody's sitting around a table having a good time, playing their characters the way they want to, then I don't really care, if the players are drinking or what they're doing. But I will say this: if somebody were to play in a game and have a lot of drinks and make some really stupid decisions that gets their character killed, okay, you're dead. Yeah, I mean, that's kind of it's
no
sort
remorse.
It's sort of a self-policing issue, isn't it?
Yes, definitely.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Tell us what you do during your game, how you handle alcohol effects, and how you handle your players, and if they drink in the game, rfistaff@gmail.com. And that'll throw us into the Creature Feature Theater.
Creature Feature Theater.
All right. Creature Feature Theater, and this week we are talking about giants and all the different giant types that there are out there.
Hey, they might be giants. Okay, they are is the title of the segment.
Okay, they might be giants. Little birdhouse in your soul. Okay.
I didn't want you to sing.
You are a Johnny-come-lately with your TMBG, aren't you?
Well, hey.
At least you didn't start with Anna Ang or something.
That's true.
Okay.
This was a
I love
Facebook
that
request, but I couldn't find the listener's name. I apologize for that.
Oh, that's okay. And, you
Thanks,
know,
Nick.
no problem. Don't sweat it.
Yeah.
Where to start with all the different types of giants in AD&D? I mean, you have your 6+1 on the monster manual. You got
What's
the cloud.
the +1?
I'll let you know. You have the
okay.
cloud giant, fire, frost, hill, stone, storm, and the Titan. That's your +1.
Okay.
Yes. Titan.
Is a Titan a true giant?
It is considered a giant. It is considered one of the types of giants.
But they aren't listed as a giant, so to speak. Though.
Yeah, I know.
Okay. So,
Titan-
so we've
I
got
could-
six
I consider
there.
him a giant class type creature.
That's fair. Okay.
Wouldn't Titans be considered like the god of giants type thing?
Well,
No?
not in a deities and demigods kind of way, no.
No? Okay.
No, they don't. It in the monster manual, it doesn't really elaborate on that too much. But if, from what I remember, at least how I play them, Titans are the most feared of all the different giant types that I have.
Well, I mean, you're not going to run into a Titan in just everyday situations. They're not normally on they're not normally on the regular, prime material plane. So
Right. Yeah, you don't run into them all too often.
yeah.
Every time
So
I
then, beyond the monster manual, we've got 5 more in the other 2 books.
That's correct. In the
So-
Fiend Folio, we got the Fog and the Mountain Giants. Fog are basically cousins of the Cloud Giants, and the Mountain Giants are cousins to the Hill Giants. Basically, they're just sub races of those different types. And
Monster
on the
Manual
last,
2 gets a little hard to pronounce.
yes,
Yeah,
Monster Manual 2. Yeah, you got the.
I'm usually the stickler on the pronunciations, and these I don't know where the words come from originally, so we can just sort of go wherever we go with this.
Yeah, on the Monster Manual 2, you got the Fomorians, the Fomorian giant, which is kind of like it's a mutant in a way.
Oh, they're nasty, ugly. Every
Yes,
one of them
they're
looks different. Yep.
misshapen, and they got eyes on their butts or whatever.
Eyes on
They got the Furbolg and the Verbeeg.
the Furby?
The
Yeah,
Verbolg
I
and
know.
Furbeeg, don't you know?
Yes.
Yeah, they sound like Muppets almost.
Oh boy.
Here's Furbolg and Verbeeg.
Yeah.
Now, before we go into all of them, I wanted to ask if either of you guys ever run through the G series Against the Giants?
Yes.
No.
Okay, good, because I have not, and so you'll be able to be a little bit more of an authority on how they actually play out in a sanctioned, pre-written kind of way.
Well, I've used giants actually in a campaign once before. My idea of the giant was that there was a village. The giants were attacking a village, and then so the village would stop the giant from attacking on a monthly basis. They would use a sacrifice on top of a hill every month of a small villager, pretty much, that they can overpower and put up there. It seemed like the whole King Kong type thing. So the players came into town. They realized this was happening, so they decided it was their mission to destroy the giant, so no other person would be sacrificed. That's how I used it in one of my.
What kind of giant did you have? Was it hill giant?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean that's good because when
pretty cool,
I think of the giant as the monster, the bad guy, it's usually the hill giant that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
But
also,
it's interesting because the giants, by and large, are not any more evil than good. If you go down through all the different ones that Nick was just stating, you've got some in there like the storm giant, who is the most fearsome of all the giants. He's good.
Yeah, he's chaotic good. You got it.
And the fact that any of these are good doesn't necessarily make them the friends to the humans. I think it's the Furbolg that I'm trying to remember this because I don't have it in front of me, but I know the Furbolg is one that could be good, but I think that's the giant that is very fearful of humans and sort of steers clear of people. I mean, they're not automatically aligned with humans or anything like that.
Yeah, they are human-looking, but they are actually in the description it says here, these human-looking giants will not always greet strangers with open arms, but usually Furbolgs will not try to kill them, unless given provocation, of course. They do, however, enjoy appearing as little people and duping humans out of their treasure.
That's right. They're the ones where one of their powers is alter self.
Yes. They can alter self, fool's gold and forget, and they could do detect magic.
Mm-hmm.
And they could do, was it diminution? I can't say that.
Diminution?
Yeah, diminution. They could make themselves
that's a pretty fun. I haven't thought of. I've never brought a Furbolg into a game, but now that we're bringing it up, I like the idea of starting out as a little creature, little leprechaun or something that suddenly, by the time the great reveal comes through, that would be a good. That would be a really good. Or just to, maybe as a way of testing the villagers. Let's say that this Furbolg is trying to decide whether or not to finally trust humans, and instead of coming down as a giant where he figures, well, I'm a giant, they're going to be nice to me because I can squish them, it comes down to something very vulnerable to see, how do you treat somebody who's very weak.
Right.
That could be sort of the test, nice little alignment test for the players there.
Ooh,
now, I'm trying to remember, beyond the G series of modules, has there been any other adventures that giants have been a part of? And there's only one I could think of. I think in Lost Caverns of Zoicanth, there are Fomorian giants in there.
Really? I've never read through those at all.
But I can't think of any other published modules off the top of my head where there's any other like giants that might play a prominent role. But that might be something good for our listeners to look up and let us know on Facebook or on the website.
Wasn't there a novel based around a giant from the D&D?
Well, they novelized against the giants. I know that.
Well, not that one. I know that one, but there was another one I remember reading. Maybe it wasn't a D&D novel. I remember reading something with giants. I can't remember the name. Now you're speaking about that.
No, I can't really think of that.
But it's interesting because, as you say, the giants come in at all different sizes. They're mostly pretty human appearing. I mean, you have the fire giant that, which is kind of not. Here's something I really liked is that the fire giant. If this was some game that had been written in the past couple of years where people are trying to make all their role playing games as bombastic and video game like as possible, the fire giant would be made of fire and would have fire coming out of his eyes and everything else.
Right.
But the fire giant basically has red hair.
Yeah.
I think you just described...
He's more fire resistant, basically, and that's it.
Jason, I think you just described the World of Warcraft version of a fire giant, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly, right? But I like the fact that the fire giant, you'll know him by his orange teeth and his red hair, and the fact that he's impervious to a lot of fire attacks and maybe where he's hanging out. But that's the main difference. They're still very rational, human-like creatures.
Right.
And, I guess the Fomorian is the only one that's really incredibly fantastic and repulsive in their case.
Yeah. Yeah.
You can have a giant that's, sure, you can have a 20-foot storm giant, but then you could have, aren't the Verbeegs only about 8 or 9 feet tall?
Yeah, Verbeeg, I believe, are the smallest of the and you can almost consider them, they're really like ogre-sized, if even that. They're like anywhere between 8.5 to 10 feet tall, the Verbeek. They're usually called, there's kind of a nickname for them there, but they...
Verbies?
Yeah, the Verbeek, I'm trying to remember. Or they're usually called human behemoths.
Human behemoths.
Yeah, human behemoths.
There is one other type of giant that I have to pull out my dragons again. But I was actually really surprised. I went back and I looked through the good old dragon number 112, the Ultimate Article Index.
I love that one.
I keep that Xeroxed and sitting out because it's a great place for me to flip to.
Didn't you say you kept that on your office desk for like a week, just open so people can look at it?
Just flipping through it.
Laminated.
Laminated, yeah.
No, but I do have it 3-hole punched.
Wow.
But I was really surprised that at least going through that article index, almost nothing has been written in Dragon Magazine about giants. There's never been an ecology of written. So, hey, Todd, our resident writer, Todd Hughes, might want to give that a crack because he's done some very good ecology of the measle and other things. But the one place I found, way back, there was something on, how heavy is my giant that talked a little bit about how much can they lift, and that's kind of useful. But there's a really good creature catalog. It was in Dragon number 101. We've actually used a couple of the monsters from there before. The creature catalog is where the automaton appeared.
Yeah, the automaton, yep.
And where the creeping pit was written up. And in that same article, there is one more giant, and it's the sea giant.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, looks like a merman in the picture that they've put in with it. And they say it's an evolutionary offshoot of giant kind which returned to the sea and readapted to a marine environment. Now, you can already find storm giants under the sea, but that's okay. They call it a Type 1. It's a Type 1 sea giant that lives on coastal grottos, or a Type 2 that actually spends its entire life in the ocean. And the Type 2 actually has a tail and all those types of things.
I just thought of a new type.
Really?
I think I'm gonna. Well, I just thought of a new type, and I think I'm gonna write it up and put it up on the website.
Sweet.
So.
Give us a little heads up on that.
What is it?
Yes, give us a taste.
Well, if I tell you, it'll give away the whole thing.
So what? So you're gonna write it up. We all know that no one's gonna steal it.
I'm thinking like a swamp giant, something that lives in the swamps and marshes.
Yeah,
that's
would be pretty cool. So
yeah,
I think I'm gonna come up with a swamp giant.
Yeah, I think giants are really underexplored.
Right. Because I was looking at this, the mountain giant out of Fiend Folio, and this kind of gave me an idea for another type of giant. This mountain giant, it can summon and control other monsters. It can control sometimes ogres or trolls or other hill giants. Mm-hmm. So even with this mountain giant, you can kind of build a whole layer around this one mountain giant with all these different monsters that serve it, that it's summoned. So, and I'm kind of
really
thinking
cool.
an idea, maybe a swamp giant, maybe too, kind of something similar.
Well, let me ask you guys one more thing about giants.
Sure.
Something that comes up in all of the different descriptions of them is this idea of giants as being not particularly intelligent, but very cunning.
Yeah.
I mean, now some of them do have high intelligence, and I was kind of noticing as I was looking at the different ones that basically the more on the evil side of the spectrum they are, the lower their intelligence tends to be, and the higher their intelligence, the closer they get to being good aligned. On the whole, that's not a hard and fast rule. On the whole, so there are a couple like the storm giants and exceptional intelligence, and I think the Furbolg can go as high as genius, but mostly they're average to low. So
some are in a high category, but not few, not many.
So you're DMing with giants. How do you interpret the idea of a giant being not very intelligent, but very cunning?
Well, a cunning giant would actually set things up, maybe. maybe act stupid, but not really be stupid.
Right. You can still be have a low intelligence creature, but be cunning and devious. And I think this even goes beyond the giants, but also low intelligent creatures themselves. Is I play them as basically devious 8-year-old children.
That's
you know what?
idea.
That's good. I think you guys nailed it. You both just said the word devious. I like that a lot. I think devious is
I play them as devious, like 8-9-year-old dysfunctional kids, and I've seen a few in my day. So I've seen a few in the schools here, and I tell my kids to stay away from.
It's all the drinking they do.
That we do not condone on this podcast.
Yeah, but they're 8 and 9 years old. They better not be drinking.
No, these giants are much older, and we'll stick.
Yeah, I'm talking about the kid.
I like I like that description. So an intelligent but cunning giant. You can think of it as devious.
So do we have any hooks for people out there to use for giants in their games? Like I gave one about how the villagers had to give a sacrifice to the giant just to keep him happy each month. What would you guys try to do as your hook for your game, maybe? Off the top of your head.
I'd like to pull that. I really like the idea of using that
the King Kong effect
alter self, using that alter self, and kind of taking a twist on the old idea where the emperor goes into the city as dressed as a commoner to see how they treat him. Only this time it's a giant going among the people, disguised as something very weak to see how he gets treated. And then what they do is going to determine, what the giant would do next.
Isn't that a reality show? Well, minus the giant thing.
And the reality, yeah.
The boss goes into the job and pretends to be one of the low people and find out what's really going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was just, like I said before, the mountain giant, just under its description of the different creatures it could summon, the ogres, trolls, and other hill giants. You can build a whole lair around that mountain giant. And maybe his lairs, if he's a mountain giant, maybe he's he's set up shop near a dwarven stronghold, and these trolls and hill giants are causing problems with the dwarves, and they need some help. And behind the whole thing is this one mountain giant. So I thought that was a pretty good, cool way of using that particular. And it's a monster out of the Fiend Folio. See, it can be useful, folks.
Who says it's not useful? Come on. No one ever said that.
A
few. Yeah. We won't get into that, though. All right.
That's a different show.
Yeah. Tell us what you think and how you use giants in your game. We'd like to hear that. I always like to hear good ideas, and so does the rest of the crew. rfistaff@gmail.com.
The Dragon's Horde.
So in the Dragon's Horde this week, we have a seemingly innocuous little magical item here, which... when I first saw it, I thought this ought to be a little bit of fun, and then realized that it opens up into a much wider world of possibilities. And what we have is the Amulet of the Plains. So this is an amulet which
that's boring.
enables the wearer, possessor, I guess, to transport to any of the upper levels of the Outer Plains.
Once they get a hang of it, yeah.
Well, once they first get it, I mean, right away it's going to work, and you could be transported safely to any of the upper levels of the Outer Plains. But, at the beginning, your character doesn't necessarily know anything about them. I mean, unless
Wait a minute.
for some reason...
This is a definition of safe I not quite understand.
Well, you arrive safely. I'm not saying that you're safe after you get there. I'm saying arriving safe.
Right.
Yeah, there's no teleport errors or anything like that.
Exactly, and because this is the thing, is you're not really teleporting per se. But so at the beginning, unless your character for some in-game reason has extensive knowledge of the Outer Plains, it's going to be a random thing. It's going to be randomly going to one of the 16 different planes that are available in the Outer Plains. But as the character gets more used to this, travels more, they can begin to actually control where they go and how they get there. Yeah. But this brings up the whole much bigger point of, okay, you've just had a character in your game receive an amulet that allows them to travel at will to the upper levels of the outer planes. Here we go to the outer planes. Great, what happens next?
Right.
And yeah, so this is good that we had Jeff Grubb on the show a few issues ago, because Jeff Grubb, of course, is the author of the amazingly helpful book for this type of thing called The Manual of the Planes.
I love that book.
Yep, I got a copy. I love it.
Like I told Jason before the show, that was one of the first books that I actually had bought with my own money as a kid. When I was, and I bought it from Toys R Us for $9.98.
Funny thing you mentioned that, because I just got mine like 4 years ago. I think I went to Gen Con and I purchased it. It was like one of the last few AD&D books I had in my collection. I had to get it.
It's so good. I mean, we could do a whole show just on that, and maybe sometime in the future we will. But
good idea.
So I was kind of going back and looking at the different ways that the planes are connected. And, of course, there's a lot of different places you can look. Back in the Player's Handbook right away, you've got that sort of famous illustration of where's the prime material plane and how it's connected to the outer planes and the astral planes and those types of things. And then there's a whole lot of different diagrams attempting to explain the idea, of course, in the Manual of the Planes as well, which gets really complex because if you're talking about essentially interdimensional travel and trying to take these complex concepts and turn them into something that's not only not only that you could draw in a two-dimensional sketch, but also that has some meaning in game terms, so that so you don't end up in metaphysical la-la land instead. And I thought what was the most useful. Well, let me kind of back up a little bit.
Okay.
I think most of our audience that's really into the game is going to know the basics of it, but I'll kind of revisit it for a moment. You've got your prime material. No, yes?
Why don't we revisit the rolling system for this? Because I know a lot of new players will look at this and go, huh?
Okay, yeah, let's start there.
So you take a D6. You roll your D6, and if you roll 1 to 3, you don't add anything to it. You just keep the roll as it is. If you roll...
I rolled a 5.
All right, so you would add 12 to a D12.
Okay.
So you would take a D12, roll it, and add 12 to it.
I rolled a 3. 15. I'm going to Gehenna.
You're going to Gehenna. That's how that would work.
Nice.
So basically, when you roll you roll D6. If it's 1 to 3, you don't add anything to it. You just take the roll as is. If you roll a 4 through a 6, you take a 12-sided die and add 12 to your roll. That's how you get the upper ones. And Jason, why don't you take a roll on that? Let's see where you go.
I noticed on the...
You got to roll for me. I don't have my dice in front of me.
Well, I noticed on the table that 11 and 12 is Abyss, 16 and 17 is 9 Hells. So...
Now, you know what? I want to roll for myself. I got them here.
Okay.
So let's see.
Roll D6.
All right, so I've got the Amulet of Planes, and I give it a go, and I've rolled a 4.
So then now roll a D12.
And add 12 to it.
And add 12 to your result.
Okay, so now we grab a D12, and there we go. Your D12 cries itself to sleep, but not now. And I rolled... You guys have seen that shirt, right?
Yes.
And I've rolled a 12.
So
24
you got,
then.
Oh, so you got one of the prime material planes then.
All right, now... This is actually, I after reading through the Manual of the Planes, which is written later, I might actually do it differently. But let's start with the prime material planes, since we rolled that up.
Okay.
So the prime material plane isn't just one; it's all the different sort of interdimensional travel. So if you've been playing a campaign where you had your characters fall into, a Boot Hill world or a Gamma world or something like that, that would be traveling from one prime material plane to another, meaning that they all have the same physics, time flows the same way. It's essentially the universe as you know it, the planet as you know it. It's just a different time and a different rules and those types of things.
Yeah.
So that's
even the. I was going to say even the chart says you can alternately use ethereal, astral, or an alternate prime material plane kind of thing.
Ooh, now ethereal and astral, that gets a little bit hard.
Yes.
Yeah, so you've got your prime material planes and the outer. If you think of it as a ring, I mean, in terms of placing it in something that can be looked at in 2 dimensions. If you think of it as a ring, then you've got the outer planes out around that with sort of hubs sticking out towards it, and you have to pass through the astral plane to reach the outer planes, and you have the ethereal plane that permeates all these things within. And I have to confess that I have not really fully gathered all the things in Manual of Planes that come into playing in the ethereal plane or places where things are just completely massively different. But there is a really good schematic that's on page 7 of the Manual of the Planes, and this makes it a little bit easier. So instead of worrying so much about trying to envision the actual physical location, so to speak, of these different planes, which could make your brain explode anyways, this nice little schematic just lays it out and says, okay, just in terms of how can you get from one to the other, how do you have to get through? And this is what I think is the most relevant to what we're looking at right now, and that's from the prime material plane. The only way to get to the outer planes, there's only 2 ways to do it. It's either using a special method of travel, like conduits, that take you directly to the outer planes, or you're going to have to, in some way or another, travel through the astral plane, because that's how the prime material plane is actually connected to these outer rings of planes. And there's 3 ways that they lay it out in there, and they specifically, or Jeff, I shouldn't say they, really he, specifically addressed the amulet of the planes, which was very helpful. So you've got 3 things that you could be doing. Conduits, those are like wormholes or gates. So the characters, if they're able to find a wormhole, then it will take them directly into the outer planes. 1 round, they can take all their things with them. That's great. There's another way, it's color pools, which are actually traveling through the astral plane, and I won't go into those because they're not relevant to this magical item. But then spell effects, and this is anything like the cleric's sort of high-level plane shift, and the amulet of the planes essentially is a way of replicating these these other types of spells. And in these cases, what the player has to do, if they're familiar with where they're trying to go, is to visualize. And so this is where the rules get good, because if we're talking about the first time you use it, okay, we roll, we see which one you go to, and now we have to figure out what happens. But if your player really holds on to this amulet and starts making it a regular thing, they're going to want to say, I'm specifically going to a certain place.
Right, they could do that.
They get more proficient over time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So what they're able to do is to visualize a place that they've been and say, I'm trying. Let's say that the player specifically starts going back and forth to Olympus, let's say, and starts visualizing a place in Olympus and wants to go there, then they can get there. But they still have to roll, because there's a chance, even though they're visualizing, that the caster isn't going to be able to be totally accurate. And the chart that Jeff laid out in here was rolling on a percentile die. You've got a 20% chance of getting within 100 yards of where you were actually visualizing. From there on, it gets a little bit worse. From 21 to 60, you're somewhere within 10 miles of where the caster. And
that's a huge margin
pretty big, but you could still march your way over to where you're trying to go. From 61 to 90, you're within 100 miles of where you meant to be. Hopefully not in the ocean. And that last 10% from 91 to a 00 means that the caster is within one. I'm going to actually read this exactly because I like the way he wrote it. Within 1,000 miles of the area visualized, and usually in the realm of another powerful extraplanar being. Hey, at least you hit the right plane. He actually probably goes, hey, at least you hit the right plane.
Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, but here, like, you have a thing, it's like, oh, I want to go hang out with Aphrodite, and next thing he knows, he's hanging out with Hades.
Oops.
Well, this would be on the same plane, though. So Aphrodite and Hades would actually be on different outer planes.
Oh, you just ruined that whole thing.
Yeah, you do.
Maybe you'd be going to hang out with Aphrodite, and you end up hanging out with Zeus, who treats you the way that he does some of the other farm animals that he runs into. You wouldn't like that too much.
Jason.
Okay, point taken. That would work.
Well,
But this gets into a whole other thing that's worth going back and kind of reading through how the outer planes work.
Well,
Most of them, it's kind of what it's your time is flowing at the same rate that it flows in the prime material plane. That's okay. Your physics are going to work the same way. But one of the things that was surprising to me to go back and see, I had forgotten about this idea of gravity fields.
Right.
So you have these different areas within the plane, these different interplanar areas that are basically controlled by some powerful being. So somebody that on the prime material plane would be considered a deity. Each one has a certain sphere of influence. And as you're getting close to the edge of one and you move over to the next one, suddenly the gravity flips around because it's always pointing at some center that's based on whatever that particular being has decided is their center of influence.
Well, let's do what we normally do, Jason. Interrupt you for a minute here. Why don't we all roll and see where we get on the plane? Because I want to do one of those quick rolls, see where I would end up.
Oh.
Let's just say I'm sitting there concentrating and I want to go to Nirvana and see Kurt Cobain. Haha, lame joke, I know.
Oh.
Yeah, and I rolled a 58.
Okay, so you are not too bad. You're within 10 miles of Kurt Cobain's house.
Sweet.
So, I mean, at this point, you would be able to march on over.
I want to hang with Aphrodite.
Okay, go for it.
72.
So so as the DM, I've got a chance to put you within 100 miles, and I could be nice and I could actually roll and see if, on a D100 how close you are. But I'm not going to be nice. I'm going to put you 99 miles away from where you meant to be, but not close enough to another being. But the point is that you're now going to have this whole adventure of trying to get over to them.
True. And this only teleports, or I mean not teleports, but this transports just the bearer of the amulet, correct?
Yeah.
I think it is it's just the individual that is possessing the device.
Well, what about if other people are touching the bearer? Would you allow that? Maybe?
That gets into the whole kind of that's the same thing that comes up with teleport. Well, what if we all hold on to him when he teleports? Well, if we can't hold on to him, how can he hold on to his sword?
Let's all hold hands.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that kind of depends on how your game is going. If you have a need as a DM to be able to get a whole party over into another plane, then just go ahead and let everybody grab onto the one.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a need to be too much of a stickler about that. But once you get him into it, the other thing I started thinking about is, all right, so you get over to the other plane, and now you're there with Aphrodite. Oh, you're 100 miles away, but you can make your way to Aphrodite eventually. And you've brought your whole party with you because they all locked arms and sang "We Are the World," and then we went there.
Please don't sing that.
And then, all right, you get separated from your party. You're the one with the amulet. And they don't know how to find you, and how are they going to get back to the prime material plane?
That's a whole adventure in itself.
That's a good thing about the planes. Putting Jeff's book aside, the planes are not hard written in stone, so you can make the planes be whatever you want them to be.
Yeah, you could, but I mean, it's a lot more fun to me if you actually have some geography, so to speak.
Some guidelines.
Planography.
I actually would I like the fact that I don't know what the planes look like other than Jeff's book. And I can just say, well, this is here, this is there, and I can make my own little evil, devious things happen there.
Oh, sure.
Yeah, that's why his book is so good.
Yeah, I mean, he has a great bit in the intro where he says, he's going through and trying to figure out one thing or another, and he finally, when he couldn't find a source for things, he used the grand Dungeon Master tradition. He made it up.
Yeah. Wing it.
So you can too.
So basically, this is a personal TARDIS.
Could be. Actually, that's one thing I want to investigate a little bit more, because the whole idea here of going between the prime material planes and the outer planes is that somehow or another you're traveling through the astral plane to get there. And if you actually interact too much with it, since you mentioned the TARDIS, time becomes a big issue. because the astral plane, according to the Manual of Planes at least, and this is an officially published book, so I'd like to go by it, 365,000 rounds pass for every one perceived round of time to the characters. So
holy shnikes.
Yeah, so that's 100. I think I'd have to go look at the page, but I think it said that would be 170 days for every 1 minute of of perceived time. So if you need to put a character, let's say you have a character who's been poisoned on the prime material plane and you need them to be safe for a while, you could pop them off to the astral plane and they're essentially in stasis because it's going to take 170 days. You can reach for them 170 days later and only 1 minute has passed for them. But of course, if you stay in the astral plane for, I don't know, let's say a couple of hours.
Now,
you might run into the Githyanki.
You might.
Would you guys consider like other campaign settings planes as well? If you're obviously, we know there's other campaign settings in First Edition. Would you guys use those as other planes as well?
Well, yeah, I mean that's a good for if you rolled going to a different prime material plane.
Right.
I consider other campaign setting.
Like, would you guys?
Or are
consider...
you talking about completely different games, or are you just saying, like, as in Forgotten Realms versus Greyhawk?
Forgotten Realms, Dragonlance, or even Ravenloft for that matter.
Sure, why not?
For me,
yeah.
I like. If we're just talking First Edition, I would say like World of Greyhawk, Forgotten Realms, and I guess Dragonlance fits into this too. I would say there are different worlds in the same prime material plane.
I only brought up the issue because the edition that shall not be named actually published an updated manual of the planes, and they included Ravenloft as one of the planes of existence. So,
yeah, no,
like the plane
you know what? Now that you say that, yeah, I think I like Nick's approach better, which is they're different worlds, they're different planets, they could be in different solar systems.
That's how I kind of perceived it too.
Okay, everybody has their own opinion, and I wanted to hear what you guys thought.
So the Amulet of the Planes, I guess the point is that if you're going to introduce it into a game,
be prepared.
Do a lot of research before you do, because your players are going to be suddenly saying, "We're heading for Gehenna. What happens? Come on, what happens?"
I still picture this thing when someone uses it. You hear the thrumming of the TARDIS in the background. So I don't know why.
That's a good sound effect. I think I'd like to have that around.
I always think of that. Every time I think of the Amulet of the Planes when they transport, I think of that Star Trek sound when they go boom like that.
I like the TARDIS.
I like Doctor Who better than Star Trek, so I'm going to go with the TARDIS sound.
Yeah.
Boo.
Yeah, let's see what kind of letters we get from that.
Fine.
Oh yeah.
All right. So we've discussed the Amulet of the Planes, and we should probably save the rest of it for another future show because we could do a whole show based upon it, like Jason said. So.
Yeah, we should. We should.
Well, we'll think about that in the future. Maybe we'll have Jeff come back on the show, and we'll talk about that a little bit with Jeff, because he might want to talk about the planes.
Capital idea, Jeff.
Anyway, so let's head over into the end of the show. Well, guys, I guess that's going to wrap up our show for this week.
This is the end. This is the end, my friend.
Oh, boy.
Yes, Jim Morrison, thank you.
That was Nick's interpretation.
I thought it was Val Kilmer.
I don't look like him. I don't even have his paycheck, so.
I just realized that your avatar, it's Phineas, right?
Yeah, Phineas, you betcha. Phineas
your Phineas avatar looks kind of like Val Kilmer, now that I think about it. Yeah.
Interesting.
Val Kilmer in Phineas Fingers, The Unleashed.
The Unleashed, yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're just going to wrap up the show for this week. We'll be back next week with another exciting and fabulous show. Don't forget to call our voicemail at 206-279-3272 and comment on the Facebook site for the contest.
Yeah, win yourself a T-shirt.
Win yourself a T-shirt that Jason will ship to you personally by driving. No, I'm kidding. He will send it in the mail.
Yeah, they come in. Now, remember, they come in different sizes: chaotic good, chaotic neutral. No.
That would be good.
And don't forget, order your T-shirts for a con season so we can see you at Gen Con and Origins, and we'll have ours too, and we'll shake hands and all that good stuff.
Yeah, that's a good one. If we see anybody with a T-shirt, we should definitely go up and get them to say hi on the air so they can shout "Hi, Mom" or whatever.
Yeah. Send us your pictures. Take pictures of you with your T-shirt.
Yeah, I mean, if you go to your local gaming shop and you want to take a picture with the local gaming shop guy and send it in with the T-shirt or maybe even a sign that says, I listen to the RFI podcast, we'll post it up on the site.
That'd be really good. I'd like to promote people's local gaming shops, too. So please, folks, write in or call in and tell us something about your gaming shop if they carry any old school stuff.
In fact, the next person that does that sends in a picture of their local gaming shop, maybe with the guy in the shop or something with them in the picture, with a little sign that says, I listen to the RFI podcast, we'll send it on the air and we'll talk a little bit about it.
Yeah.
So we got 2 things in one going on. Give us a shout-out. Vote in the poll. This is DM Vince signing off for the crew of Jason and Nick, NPC Jason and DM Nick. Keep it original. Keep it old school. Good night, everybody.
Later, everybody.
Roll for initiative.
All right, so in the Dragon's Horde this week, we have a seemingly innocuous little magical item that seemed innocuous.
Jason?